Is it time for Inteleon VMAX to take front and center stage? Maybe. Welcome back, everyone, for more from the Sableyes. I'm Mitch, and today we're going to take a look at Inteleon VMAX for the Darkness Ablaze format. This card has obviously seen some play in the past, but with PikaRom gone and Vikavolt V not necessarily making the splash in the standard format as we would have expected, Inteleon has an opportunity to shine. It's obviously had a little bit of success already in some tournaments over the last week. The Hearst TCG tournaments over the last couple of days have had Inteleon decks in them, and this one is definitely looking pretty powerful. So what we'll do is we'll jump over into PTCGO and see exactly how this list is supposed to work. So here is the Inteleon VMAX list that we've been running with. It's one of the ones that had featured in Hearst on Wednesday, I think. I'm not entirely sure exactly when, but it has seen quite a lot of success. I know that Celio's network has been featuring this deck quite a bit as well. It's all obviously built around Inteleon VMAX. Inteleon VMAX with 320 HP and a lightning weakness has had some struggles in the last couple of months, with PikaRom obviously being quite a powerful deck, but now that that counter is gone, this card is looking pretty solid. Hydro Snipe for 60 is a really good single energy attack. Obviously 60 damage for one energy is good in itself, but we also get to remove an energy from our opponent's active Pokemon and put that back into their hand, so a small amount of energy denial in this list as well. And then Max Bullet for 160 damage for 3 energy, and then doing 60 damage to a benched Pokemon can also be a really, really powerful attack. This card has a lot going for it, and it's actually very similar to something like Dragapult VMAX in that there's a lot of pressure that this card can put on just with its second attack. 160 is obviously going to be two-hitting a lot of things in the format. It won't quite get through a Eternatus VMAX with 340 HP, but it would get darn close, so a very, very strong option. And the good thing with Inteleon VMAX is that Inteleon V is not in itself a bad attacker. It's obviously not quite as good, but Snipe Shot can potentially set up some knockouts down the line. 40 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon, can potentially set up knockouts for you. We run a 3-3 line in this deck, and that's going to be supplemented by 3-3 Frosmoth. The Ice Dance ability has always been really, really strong. The ability to attach as many water energy as you like from your hand to your benched water Pokemon is very powerful. We just haven't seen an opportunity to use it yet. Lapras VMAX has obviously tried to get Frosmoth to work, but it hasn't quite seen the success as some other decks would have liked, but that's okay. Ice Dance now seeing an opportunity to improve with the Inteleon VMAX deck. We're going to use this to try and power up our Inteleons quickly so that we can get knockouts, or at least start spreading that damage around. That's why we've got a 3-3 line, 3 Snom, 3 Frosmoth, to make sure that we've got as many options as possible. We also have one more attacker. Keldeo-GX is in the deck. Now, Pure Heart isn't quite the ability that it once was. There's obviously not as many GX Pokemon or EX Pokemon floating around in this format, but you can potentially steal yourself a game if you take yourself a Keldeo-GX in front of a Mewtwo or something like that. You might be able to potentially win a game that way. The real reason this card is in the deck is for its GX attack, 2 water and a colorless. Resolute Blade GX does 50 times the amount of benched Pokemon that your opponent has. Normally, that would be 250 damage, which is in itself not amazing. It's still a pretty strong attack for 3 energy, but when you think about the fact that Eternatus VMAX is one of the biggest hype decks for this format, suddenly Resolute Blade looks like a really solid attack. That is 400 damage if they have a full bench, which is fantastic. So we're going to try and get a knockout with Keldeo if we can. The best bit is if they do take a return knockout, they're only taking 2 prizes, so we can still feed our opponent 2 VMAXs if possible. The rest of the deck, as usual, Pokemon are built around getting that engine running. We have 4 Jirachis in this list, as well as 1 Dedenne and a Crobat V as our consistency engine, and there's also 1 copy of Zigzagoon in the list, because we're obviously going to be looking at running 4 copies of Scoop Up Net to get our Jirachis in and out of the active. Scoop Up Net is going to help with Zigzagoon as well. We can use Headbutt Tantrum multiple times to get those neat little 10 damage ticks on targets when we need them. Pokemon like Dedenne obviously can get knocked out in one shot by Max Bullet, but Pokemon like Crobat, not so much. Maybe we can put some ticks on those and then take some knockouts. Maybe we can get ourselves 2 ticks on an Eternatus VMAX to make Max Bullet a clean 2-shot. The rest of the items, pretty consistent and solid. We've got 4 Quick Ball, we've got 4 Pokemon Communication. I just had a moment where I completely forgot what I was talking about. 4 Pokemon Communication and 4 Quick Ball is the best consistency for our net. We have 20 Pokemon, so Pokemon Communication is going to be very, very useful. And obviously Quick Ball will find us as many basics as we need. There are 4 switches to go along with our 4 Scoop Up nets to get in and out of those Jirachis. And we also have 3 copies of Capacious Bucket from Rebel Clash. This card hasn't seen a huge amount of play yet, but it does sync nicely with this Frosmoth engine. So we can use this to search our deck for 2 water energy and attach them straight away with our Frosmoth. Seems pretty solid. We only run 1 stadium in the list, and it is Wondrous Labyrinth Prism Star. This is a very, very good stadium for this type of deck. We're attacking for 3 energy, but we have energy acceleration through Frosmoth, so it's not too hard to get 4 energy onto our Pokemon. If we can do that, we stop our opponent from being able to attack with Wondrous Labyrinth. They won't be able to accelerate energy as fast as we can. It means we can potentially get ourselves a free turn. This one, obviously very good against the Eternatus VMAX when they are attaching manually. The supporter line is relatively safe and secure. We've got a 4-3-2 Marnie and Research line down to your 2 copies of Boss's Orders. That's a very generic supporter line at the moment. We also play 2 copies of the new Bird Keeper from Darkness Ablaze. It's one of these supporters that has a good effect with a little bit of bonus draw. It's something that we really like. Switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon and then draw 3 cards. A little bit of extra consistency whilst potentially getting around things like item lock with Vikavolt V. Finally, we have 9 water energy in our deck. That might seem a little low, but in reality, if you need any more than 9, then you've probably lost the game. We don't realistically expect to be using all 9 of them either. We'll probably use 6 or 7, and then that will be it. There's no way for us to recur our energy, so we have to hope that those 9 energy are going to remain in play, and since Inteleon VMAX has 320 HP, we would expect them to. It is important though, since we have a low count of energy, to count up the energy in your deck whilst you're in the early game, so that you don't find yourself in an awkward situation where you should have energy, but they're prized or discarded in an awkward manner. So Inteleon VMAX could potentially be the sleeper card for this set that has come up in the last couple of weeks to take its rightful place at the top of the tower. Is it good enough? That's the question. I palmed this deck off to Matt, actually, and he's recorded a couple of games. I'll commentate over the top of them. I haven't seen them. Hopefully they're pretty solid. We've got 3, so let's check out the first one right now. Here we go, game 1. We've got Matt playing the Inteleon list for us up on the ladder. Calling the coin flip here, and this type of deck doesn't really mind whether it goes first or second at the moment. I think realistically we do choose to go first, and that is what Matt has decided to do here. And look at this, this is a really, really strong start. We've got ourselves an Inteleon and a Jirachi as our basics. We have a Pokemon Communication, as well as a Frosmoth and an Inteleon VMAX. So what we could potentially do this turn is start setting ourselves up to maybe get that Frosmoth in play. We'd really like to see a supporter if we can, and our opponent looks to be playing Zacian V. So I'm thinking here, we attach the energy, Pokecom away the Inteleon VMAX, and then find ourselves a Snom. It looks like Matt is opting to get rid of the Frosmoth here, which is a fair call. Looks like he's going for a Dedenne-GX as well. That means that the Pokemon Communication will come down. We'll get rid of that VMAX, find a Snom, put that one in play, and then get ourselves ready to Dedenne. Now, the Dedenne is a risky call to a point. We're playing ADP Zacian. That could potentially be an easy couple of prizes that we didn't have to play, but looks like we're in a pretty strong spot here, especially if we find a Pokemon Communication off of this Stellar Wish. That is fantastic. We'll be able to find ourselves 4 energy next turn with Capacious Bucket, and we'll find Frosmoth as well. If we wanted to play this Inteleon V down now, we could potentially have 2 powered Inteleon VMAXs as early as next turn. So we are in a really powerful position here, and you can see how the thick counts of all these specific cards make the deck super, super consistent. We've found all of the things that we need to find early, and now it's just a matter of controlling this game as best we can. It does look like we're playing up against ADP here, so maybe the Dedenne is a bit of a risk, but it should be okay. They've removed one energy switch already. Here comes the research. Is that another couple? It could potentially have been. Here comes a metal saucer as well. Now, obviously, the attachment to the ADP means that there's no GX attack this turn, just an Intrepid Sword, and now we are going to be able to do pretty much anything that we like. We could even potentially gust up that ADP, provided that we do find ourselves an Inteleon VMAX. It might be a good idea to get some damage on that, or potentially just set up ourselves for the rest of the game. Here comes the Frosmoth here. I'll play that into the Evolve the Snom. And I mean, now we should probably Capacious Bucket first. That seems like the right thing to do. Find ourselves a couple of water energy. We can accelerate them onto our Inteleons. We'll go 3 on the left and 2 on the right, or potentially 3 on the right if you'd like. I'm going to mix it up, but I bet Matt's going to do the left one. I guarantee it. He's going to go 3 to the left and 2 to the right, because that's the type of person that he is. There we go. 3 to the left, 2 to the right. Here we go. Oh, he's going 4 to the benched Inteleon. So maybe we are looking for the potential Wondrous Labyrinth play here. That could be pretty big. This Marnie also an interesting call as well. That could maybe go for the Marnie here to try and lock his opponent out of drawing good cards next turn. No, just going to go for the Quick Ball, which is fair enough. We can Quick Ball, probably discard Boss's Orders or even Professor's Research, depending on what we're looking for here, to grab ourselves one of our Pokemon. I'm thinking that it's either going to be Crobat or Zigzagoon here, you'd think. Crobat looks to be drawing the cards, because we're looking just for the VMAX now. It's pretty much all that we need to do. Issue here might be, though, that our opponent has access to pretty much every knockout that they need already on the bench. The Crobat and the Dedenne, both 3 prizes once the GX attack has gone. We have missed the VMAX. We have access to Inteleon V, and that's it. The question is Matt going to Marnie or Research here? The switch is on, so we'll switch into Inteleon, and the Marnie coming down, gambling on finding the VMAX without the extra cards. Finds it in the end, and that's not too bad of a gamble, just because we know that it is unlikely that we won't hit one, considering there are 3 in the deck, and we've already looked through a lot of cards. But it is a bit of a risk, knowing that we might have missed. It does set our opponent back a long way now. And the best thing about hitting into this Zacian for 160, by the way, is that now it's potentially within knockout range if that Big Charm hadn't have immediately come down. Although, to be fair, the fact that the Air Balloon didn't get attached to the active means that we're in a pretty solid position. Even if our opponent finds the water energy to get the GX attack off, they are still going to need to find a switch, which they've obviously found. Loading up there so that we can see the card, and then Altered Creation. This is a-okay though, because we can definitely work with what we have in our hand. We've got Double Switch and Bird Keeper, so if we want, we can Bird Keeper into the Jirachi and then switch back into the Inteleon VMAX if we'd like. It means that we can get access to the most possible cards. Looks like that's what Matt is eyeing up here. We'll switch into the Jirachi. Use Stellar Wish, you would presume. Here comes the Ice Dance to put the energy onto that Inteleon. Stellar Wish, and then maybe go from there. Oh, this Wonder Lab could be a really, really big card here, because now that we have extra energy on our benched Inteleon, our opponent may not be able to get an attack off with their active ADP. So that's really, really big. We can retreat now into the Inteleon VMAX, attack with our second attack Max Bullet, or we could even Hydro Snipe and remove their energy to really make it impossible for them to attack. Looks like Matt going for the 60 damage snipe onto the Zacian on the bench, and that seems like a fair and reasonable move, because now, when we find Gust, we can Gust that Zacian up, take the knockout, and also remove this ADP from play as well. So a very strong position to be in. Our opponent now going looking for more cards with Professor's Research. They need to remove this Wonder Lab from play. If we keep it in play, we'll go on to win this game comfortably. Like it will not even be a question. Getting rid of 2 Boss's Orders there, our opponent. That's very unlucky. Going for the Energy Spinner now. finding just the metal. So it looks like they're attaching to the active. That implies that, yes, they do have the replacement. But even in doing this, right, even having the replacement isn't that amazing, considering the fact that we can just retreat if we want, go into the Jirachi, try and find that Gust, and then switch back into the Inteleon VMAX using the Viridian Forest that's already in play to find some energy to get a knockout that way. So we are really in a strong position. As long as everything goes according to our plan, we'll take 5 prizes next turn with an easy couple on the Zacian V on the bench as well. So I'm feeling pretty solid. They're getting rid of a boss's orders here to find a Duraludon. Maybe that could be their answer, although to be fair, it's not going to be super relevant. 180 damage onto the Inteleon VMAX here. They're going to accelerate some energy to their Zacian, you would think. I'm curious as to see whether there'll be another energy coming down. Looks like it's going onto the second damaged Zacian. And now we're in a really interesting spot because we could potentially go for the Gust here. If we want to, we can potentially retreat the active, see if there's, let's see if there's a Gust in there. There's 1 boss's orders left. You can see Matt, he's eyeing it off here. Is it worth the risk, or do we try something different? Looks like we're probably going to pick up one of these Jirachis and thin it, worst case scenario. But yeah, no, we are in a really, really good spot if we find that boss off of the Stellar Wish. It's just a matter of what is Matt planning on doing here. There's only 2 water energies left, so we won't be able to use any other attackers. Looks like we are going to go for that play. 5 energy onto the active, retreat into the Jirachi. Stellar Wish, find the boss. No boss. No boss. That's no good. Means that we're just going to need to take a knockout on the active with our Inteleon. That's not a problem. Like, we don't really mind. And it looks like Matt's going to go for the Marnie here, giving our opponent a little bit of a shuffle down as well. Doesn't seem like a bad idea. Switching into that Inteleon VMAX, could potentially go for the regular V if he wanted, but decided against it. And good that he did, because we didn't find another VMAX. We'll just max bullet here. And what we'll do is we'll take a knockout on the active, and we'll probably put 60 more on the Zacian with 160. The reason that we do that is because next turn, as long as we find a VMAX, we can Gust and take 4 prizes. So, looking pretty solid. Going with the checkerboard pattern here. Cannot find a single VMAX. So, if there aren't any left in deck, we're going to be in a bit of strife. But this Zacian has come into the active, so our opponent's going, I am taking 4 prizes here. Going to take the knockout on this Inteleon VMAX with Brave Blade, and then hope that my opponent doesn't have access to the extra VMAX. Now, the good thing for us is we can search with Quick Ball and Viridian Forest just to make sure that it is in the deck. I think it definitely is, because Matt has already looked through the deck a couple of times. It just means that really it comes down to a small amount of luck as to whether or not we can get ourselves attacking for the game here. Our opponent will be relying quite heavily on us missing, which is normally a good position for us to be in. If we're forcing our opponent to hope that we miss, then we are likely to win. A lot of quick balling here and a Marnie, so we lose the boss's orders, but it gives us a really good chance to find our Inteleon VMAX. There is the Inteleon VMAX in the hand, so now we're going to be able to evolve the Inteleon on the bench, and then it'll be as simple as taking a knockout on the benched Zacian. The Brave Blade here means that the game is now over. We can use our max bullet to do 160 to the active, which will knock that out, and then 60 more to the benched Zacian V. And it doesn't matter how many prizes that they take, we will go on to win this game. I don't know why Matt has promoted this Jirachi here. We already have all the pieces that we need, surely. 60 plus 160 is a knockout. And now it's just it's all style points from here on out. Looks like Matt is going for the 4th scoop up net. What could he possibly be looking for? Because the game is already wrapped up, and there is the concession. So that's the end of that one. Now Matt sent through a couple of other games that he's played on the ladder as well, so we might take a look at those just to see how we go here. Our opponent just loading in. We'll flip the coin here and see what happens. In all likelihood, if we go first again, we'll have a really good chance to potentially get ourselves a Frosmoth in play early. We've won the coin flip, so I'd say that yes, we are going to go first. and then we'll wait on our opening hand. No basic in that one, which could potentially be a problem for this deck. There's not a lot of basic Pokemon that aren't that are good starts as such. I'd even go as far as saying that Inteleon V is not a great start. In saying that, here comes one. But it's okay. It's not the end of the world. We're not in a bad position here at all. We've got an Inteleon V in hand, which we can turn into a Snom with Pokemon Communication. We've got an energy. We've got a second energy to attach as well. I think this is pretty much all that we can ask for here. We'll Pokemon Communication away the Inteleon. You would think that Matt would go for the Snom, and then we will attach an energy. This is a decent setup. Not a great setup, but a decent setup, because it means that if we find ourselves our evolution pieces, all we need is a couple of retreat options, and we'll be able to potentially start attacking very quickly next turn. Worst case scenario, we can just attack with our Inteleon V in the active and start powering up a second. Now our opponent has a chance to set themselves up. They'll go with the Jirachi. They're going for Fiery Flint here, so this seems like a very easy game to win already. Knowing that Fiery Flint is in the list suggests to me that we are playing against a fire Pokemon, and it looks like, I don't know exactly what it was that just got discarded there. A Mewtwo and a Fire Energy and a Cramorant. This is baby Blacephalon. So if all things are equal, we should be able to win relatively easily here, because Blacephalon has 2 times 60 HP, right? 120 HP, which is really, really bad for this particular deck. And the Cramorant is a potential 2 prizes that we can take quite easily as well. So they're going for Big Catch here, and they're searching the deck for 2 cards. We probably won't be able to disrupt that, which is disappointing, but it's not the end of the world. We've found Boss as well. That's really big. We probably won't be able to play it, to be fair. We probably have to just research and try and find our pieces some other way. We've got a Jirachi and a couple of Quick Balls, so we could potentially use something like a... we could use a Crobat here or a Dedenne to try and find some key pieces. Get rid of the Bird Keeper and pick up that Dedenne or Crobat. Looks like Matt is eyeing Crobat off. We could also grab another Inteleon V. Could have potentially grabbed a Jirachi or something like that as well to discard with the Quick Ball as well. Looks like Matt is going to get rid of either the Water Energy or the Capacious Bucket. There we go. Grabbing the Dedenne. No, grab the Crobat, man. That's the key card here. We possibly could have gotten rid of the Research if we wanted to be a bit riskier as well, because that would have potentially given us access to a couple of Inteleon VMAXs. Here's one. I think we're going to need to potentially Dedenne this hand away if we want to go looking for Snom. It's almost not worth it. We can just Hydro Snipe the active, remove their energy, and put them within range of being knocked out by Max Bullet next turn. And I think this is a pretty solid choice. We don't have a huge amount of energy to discard, so we don't want to get rid of all of them. And we also want to give ourselves an extra chance to find the Frosmoth. Which is a good call. Fiery Flint from our opponent. They've obviously been able to search for things in their hands. There's a lot of cards that we don't know at the moment, which is disappointing, but that's okay. I think that was an Oricorio. Welder coming down here, and our opponent is going to be looking to try and take a big one-shot on this Inteleon VMAX. The question is it possible for them to do it? Oh, apparently not. We'll go on to another one. I think what happened there was either our opponent accidentally only attached 1 energy, or something horrific went wrong on their side of the field, because it wasn't too bad of a setup. We've won the coin flip again here. We're going to go first again. Never finding those basic Pokemon, which is very unfortunate. And it looks like our opponent has a Charizard deck box. What does that mean? Does that mean anything? I'm not sure. We'll see whether or not this is a good matchup for us. Ooh, a really bad start there with Crobat V. That's unfortunate, but we do have Bird Keepers in hand. We have Switch in hand, so it's not the end of the world. It's definitely not good. Let's put it that way. Alright, so Pokecom and Quick Ball. I think get rid of a Bird Keeper. Find the Inteleon or the Snom and start setting up. I think we are going to need to see a Pokemon Communication here to get rid of this hand, because we really just need to find something a bit better than what we've got. We could potentially Pokecom for the Snom with the Frosmoth and leave ourselves with a Marnie for next turn, or we could just let it rip with a Dedenne. It looks like Matt's actually going for Jirachi. This is a bit of a gamble here, but it's not a bad option to have. We can switch into this Jirachi here, and if we find a Quick Ball, then we'll be in really, really good spot. Didn't look like it's happened there. We can Capacious Bucket, though. That seems fine, because if we grab the bucket, then we've at least got an attachment for this turn and next, so it's not the end of the world. Of course, would have preferred, if we could, to have that Snom. 7 energy index, that means we've got 2 prized. That's what I was talking about in the early game, right? Well, in the early part of this video, is that we don't want to leave ourselves with not enough energy. And we need to count those. We need to count those prizes. A Volcanion coming down here, so we could be in for a pretty solid matchup. Just depends, of course, on what this Volcanion is paired with. The welder comes down for 1 energy. It looks like it is going to be Charizard VMAX. So this is really interesting. They're going to switch from this Jirachi into that Volcanion to try and get multiple energies onto a Charizard. But what we can do is we can potentially just take a knockout with our first attack with Inteleon VMAX and set up a second. And that's probably the strategy for this one, because we need to try and get ourselves a knockout on the Charizard before our opponent can set up a second. Here comes the Jirachi. They'll find a Quick Ball here. Can potentially find them another Charizard V if they wished, although it's not necessary. They can just switch into their Volcanion and try and Flare Starter here. I'll put 3 energy onto the benched Charizard. It goes up to 4, which means it only needs 1 more attachment to be powered and ready to go as a VMAX. So that's quite frightening. We've got another energy in hand here. We'll attach 1, and then you'd think Marnie. Looks like that's what Matt is doing here. Try and slow our opponent down. This is a really good hand, actually. We've got ourselves plenty of options. I do want to see a Stellar Wish here, though, just so that I can try and get myself a Pokemon. That would be really good. You can get a Pokemon communication off of this Stellar Wish. That would be excellent. Doesn't look like it. Potentially use a Scoop Up Net or something like that to try and use a second Jirachi if we wanted, but I don't think that's actually going to be workable because we'll need to use the switch anyway. So I think what's going to happen here is we'll just thin out that Scoop Up Net and then Dedenne. We'll lose a Frosmoth, but there are 2 more left in the deck anyway, so it's not a problem. I'm going to scoop up this Zigzagoon, put 10 more damage down, probably onto their Zigzagoon to be fair. Switch into the Inteleon and then Dedenne. I think that's going to be the play. Not going for the switch here, not risking it. Sitting back and going, okay, no, I'm going to happily wait. And could potentially have seen a knocked out Volcanion this turn, but not this time. Obviously, if that did happen, we would have been quite afraid of our VMAX getting knocked out. So, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, don't mind this play too much, because it means that if our opponent does want to take a knockout, they're going to have to work a little bit harder to try and get it. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it, but that's okay. We've got access to Capacious Bucket and Frosmoth, which is good, so we can find energy and accelerate those energies. We can also potentially give ourselves some room to play down this Keldeo-GX if our opponent takes a knockout on our Jirachi. Welder is the play here. Looks like we're going to potentially see a couple of energy coming down onto either a new Charizard VMAX, or new Charizard V, or onto the benched Charizard just to accelerate their hand a little bit, extend it out, try and get 3 extra cards. Here comes a fresh Charizard, so this could potentially be good. If we force our opponent to take a knockout on the Jirachi here, then it means that we'll be able to really push the knockouts on other Pokemon. It looks like they could potentially be going for the Volcanion knockout here, which I don't mind at all, but we do need to find another attacker if that is going to be the case. We need to find another Inteleon next turn, preferably, because we'll take 2 prizes on the Volcanion and the Jirachi, and then we'll have to take a knockout on the Charizard VMAX that knocks our Inteleon out. So we need to find another Inteleon if we can. If we do that, we put ourselves in a really good position to win this game. It's disappointing, though, that the Jirachi has just been scooped up. It means that one of our ticks has been wasted. So, disappointing to say the least, but that's okay. We can potentially get those prizes back somehow later. Here's the VMAX. I love this card. I reckon Charizard VMAX is so cool. I don't know whether it's very viable, But this card's pretty cool as well. Inteleon VMAX. High Heat Blast coming out now from our opponent. We are going to be able to max bullet this turn if we choose to. I think it's probably not a bad idea. We'll take 2 prizes. Scoop Up Net does seem like a pretty good option as well. We could scoop up the Zigzagoon to try and give ourselves that knockout on the Charizard straight away. I don't mind the Keldeo going down either. It's not a great attacker, but it's definitely required at some point, especially if our opponent puts down more Pokemon. Although now that I'm thinking about it, it's not ideal. We probably would have preferred to have just gotten 1 energy off of the Capacious Bucket so that we can guarantee our max bullet, then try and find an Inteleon next turn. What we should be doing though is we should be using the Zigzagoon to try and snipe some damage onto this Reshizard. We're definitely going to need 1 tick. We might even need a few more depending on how this Keldeo goes. We definitely need that 1 tick there. And then we'll just research our hand away and see what we can draw ourselves into. Not a huge amount here. We would have found that Inteleon V with the quick balls here, but we wouldn't have had the energy to accelerate. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other here. We're going to get rid of, it looks like we're going to discard one of these quick balls just to check our deck, try and figure out what we've got access to. There's 3 more energies left, so we don't really have too many more flexible options. Looks like we are going to be dealing 60 damage to the bench and 320 to the active, which is very, very powerful. Switch off of the prizes, and we also grab a Pokemon, so not bad. But we are in a bit of strife here if we can't get extra energies onto this Keldeo. So this is going to be a real interesting one. They'll easily be able to G-Max Wildfire here. That will take a knockout if they can find an extra tick on this Inteleon. All this time I've been talking about it as if it is going to be easy for them, but if they don't have the 10 damage from Zigzagoon or from something like oh, there we go. They didn't have it, so we win. So a reasonably good showing there. There wasn't any really bad decks in that combo of videos where we managed to get our attacks off every time. We didn't play against Center Scorch either, which would seem to be a pretty solid matchup. And Eternatus we can also play against relatively comfortable since we have the Keldeo and the Energy Denial. So I'm actually a big fan of Inteleon. It might be time to start looking for some Lightning decks in this format, especially if this card is going to be really, really strong. Thank you to Matt for playing those games for me, and thank you to you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, consider subscribing. Click the button over the top of the Sable Eye right now. On the left-hand side of the screen are some videos YouTube thinks you'll like, and on the right we've got a playlist of more Darkness Ablaze content. Thanks everyone for coming along, and we'll see you next time for more from the Sable Eyes.